Hello and welcome to the Boardroom Company Live, the podcast for professionals who are looking to build a board career. I'm Naomi Kent and welcome today. It's November 11, which is Veterans Day, also called Remembrance Day in the UK. And today we remember those who have fought for our countries, those who continue to serve our countries, and of course, those who have served. And as you all know, I love talking about boards and careers. And so I've invited JC Vega to join me. He's a retired Army colonel. He's also a former board member of Sorensen Communications. And he is currently the founder of Executive Security Advisors. JC, welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a wonderful opportunity, especially on such an important day to veterans and all those who have served. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're here actually in Naples, Florida at the 239 studio. So thank you for having us. So let's talk a little bit about sort of cybersecurity, because this is your area of focus. But when you were on the board of Sorensen Communications, you chaired the Cyber and Privacy Committee, which I find fascinating and sounds very cool. But you were actually involved in cyber before it was cool, right? So tell us about that.
So I say I was doing cyber before cyber was cyber. And what does that mean? The term itself was classified. We couldn't talk about it in certain ways. So what we did is I've been doing defense of infrastructure, defense of the nation, many things in defense. And then I gravitated towards technology because I just found it very interesting. And there was a role that opened up, a position, a field. And so I pursued it within the military. But again, this was very early, late 1990s, early 2000s, where we really started to look to the future on what warfare might look like and how do you defend it and how do you use it as a competitive advantage.
Fascinating. And then did you choose the Army? So sort of why did you choose the Army and not some of the other branches that are out there?
Each service has their own identity. If you look at the Marines, you'll always see a very fit person. And you look at the Air Force or the Navy, and you'll see aircraft and ships and the technology, the platforms we say. The Army, you'll see organizations of people, a platoon, a company. And so what drew me to that was the idea that it's focused on people. And so there's a distinction between all of them. We all do very similar things. It's what we value. And in the Army, we value the people.
And you spent quite a few years in the Army, right?
Almost 30, quite a diverse career.
Nice. And you know, I work with a lot of military veterans who want to serve on boards. They want to change careers or they're doing something later in life. And there are some misconceptions, right, about former military members. What can you share with us that's insightful there that will help?
You know, that's a great question because I experience this over and over and over. And what is this? Is that people think we're rigid, we direct, and when we lead, we shout and we do those kind of things. To the point in one organization where I had a senior executive role, one of the other executives said, "You need to bring out that colonel. That's what we need right now." And I looked at him like, "What does that mean to you?" And what he wanted me to exert my influence. But it's more than that. We're not rigid. We're very collaborative. And we realize that to lead people is to influence, not just direct. And so it's building a team, building trust, having a lot of communication with not just your subordinates, but your superiors and those who are left and right of you. Because we all have to have a shared understanding so that in the absence of guidance, in the absence of somebody telling you what to do, you know what right looks like. And you have to have that trust in the people around you.
Yeah, I think there's a high integrity, making decisions, right? Collaborating. These are all attributes of leaders and board members, right?
That's what I find very rewarding in the overlap is that integrity really matters. Ethics really matter. Accountability really matters, because you answer to somebody at the board. You answer to the shareholders. You answer to those who selected you to represent them, to make sure the company is doing right by the goals that were established for them. In the military, it's very similar. Is if you're going to ask people to do things, we always say that whatever you tell them to do has to be legal, ethical, and moral. And you have to really understand what that means. And I see that overlap in the business side also. I also see where it doesn't overlap. So that's what I find fascinating, is how those are still very relevant topics. And from my perspective, I like bringing that to the table.
Now, while you were in the Army, you actually founded the first organization of its kind. It was the Army Cyber Institute. So tell us what that is. Tell us what that involved.
So a highlight of my career, so what are you proud of, was co-founding the Army Cyber Institute with a few other gentlemen out of West Point. And we were brought together for a very specific goal, and that is to prevent strategic surprise in cyberspace. That was 2012, 2013 timeframe. At that point, cyber was becoming institutionalized, but without any real guidance or policy. And so what we did is we came together and we brought together academia, we brought together industry, we brought together other governments, and we started a collaborative, because we realized very early is that the knowledge and expertise doesn't lie in one group. It lies in the community. And so one of my primary missions was to bring that community together, to make it a collaborative effort, to build that trust among all the entities that were participating in cyberspace. And the Army wasn't going to do that alone. And it really set the foundation for what you see the services doing now. It's a cornerstone of how cyber is implemented in the military.
What is strategic surprise in cyberspace? I really want to know what that looks like.
And we use a term, the 50-meter target. Mm-hmm. Is a target that you can see. And then we say, then the hill after next, what you can't see. Strategic is the hill after that, or the hill after that. What nobody else is thinking, anywhere from 3, 5, 10 years out. What is that landscape going to look at? Now, if you look in the private sector and the R&D side of it, they're preventing strategic surprise. They're trying to see how to identify opportunities in the market and risk that they need to start addressing now, so that when it presents itself, they have a playbook, they have a plan, they have that knowledge base already created. So for strategic surprise in the military is, what is somebody else thinking that no one else is thinking about? And how do we develop a process to actually figure out what that is, so that when whatever it occurs, we can go back and reach out. We have something that will inform us on that.
So today, JC, you advise corporations, right, on their cybersecurity strategy, and you help protect corporations today. But when you think about your training in the military, was the training that you received, is the military kind of 2 steps ahead in terms of how they deal with cybercrime? Are they ahead of what corporations are doing? Is that why it's so valuable? What does that look like?
Also a great question, because it shows a contrast between the private sector and the military, and it goes back to the correct perceptions and also some misperceptions. Mm. So to answer your question is yes and no. In some aspects, the military is ahead because we're dealing with a threat from a different perspective, not only on how to defend against it, but also how to influence the battlefield, influence the landscape, so that we set the conditions on how we're going to fight and win in that space of cyberspace. But the innovation is coming from the private sector. The private sector is moving at light speed. If you left it to the military to figure out how to do something, it's a 3 to 5 year plan before they develop something. Private sector is doing it right now. And so we had to bring the two together. And so while they're very similar, we have different paths, different objectives, but we have the same threat and the same enemy.
So let's talk a little bit about boards now, because obviously cybersecurity is a topic on the minds of board members. You've served on a board. Tell us about your board experience. How did you land your first corporate board?
So it wasn't by accident. And what I mean by that is it was purposeful. The service you offer to your clients is to prepare people for board positions and the different attributes that you have to have, the different knowledge, skills, and ability. That's one phase about it. You have to be ready. Mm-hmm. The other is people have to know what you're pursuing. And so what I say, it's both relationships and proven track record that are going to get you there. So it's opportunity and preparedness coming together, not just a resume. And that's the thing. It's not just what your resume says. People have to believe and trust you, because that's how that's a key attribute of selecting a board member, someone you can trust.
So you were invited onto a board by somebody that you knew. Was there a trust element there? How did that come about?
So as I was leaving the military, I had to be thoughtful. There's a one time in your life when while you're still in a job, you can advertise that you're looking for a job. And I've been advising in the military, when I talked about the Army Cyber Institute, working collaborative, part of that was advising the private sector. And so I found a couple of groups, one of them out of Columbia University, that focused on preparing board members and educating them. I was actually briefing many of them on the cyber threats. And I announced at that time, I'm very interested in this. And I started to learn more about what the duties and responsibilities were. And as I was going through that process, that group was approached looking for a very unique skill set. And about 5 different attributes they were looking for. One of them happened to be a veteran. And someone had experience as a CISO, a cybersecurity expert. And at that case, things lined up. Somebody knew that I was looking for something. I was doing the work ahead of time, preparing for that. The opportunity presented itself, and I was ready.
No, I love it. I mean, it's something I talk a lot about, which is tell as many people as possible about your desire to be on a corporate board, but also make sure that your brand is is visible, right, to people that are out there. And I love this element of trust, right? And I think, again, we're just looping this back into the experience you've had in the Army. You have to trust others, right? You have to trust others around you. Is that the same on a board?
It absolutely is, because when we talk about response to things, how do you respond? And people will bring out their playbook and they'll show this is step 1, step 2, step 3. And usually I pause when I'm advising an organization and I tell them, you're going to respond at the speed of trust. That is a key element. That's how fast if you believe in the plan, you're going to execute it right away. If you don't believe in the plan, you're going to pause. If you believe in your people, you're going to go with their decisions. If you don't, you're going to pause. Well, in our space, in cyberspace, those seconds, those minutes, those hours can be catastrophic to the incident. And so the idea of responding at the speed of trust has some implications. If you don't trust the individuals now, what do you need to do with the team that you have to build that trust? How do you invest in the training? How do you invest in the organization to institutionalize that trust is a key element to success of your mission?
What other attributes do board members who have been in the military, what attributes do they have that perhaps not others don't have them, but you see it across the board with military veterans who sit on boards? What are their attributes?
So one of the things that you'll see is that they lead through influence. We mentioned that earlier. They lead through influence, not directives. You have directives when appropriate, but the idea of building collaborations, like I mentioned earlier, you have your team that works for you. You have the individuals that you work for, but you also have your peers that are left and right of you. But on top of that, you have organizations that are left and right of you that have an influence on whether you succeed or not, like your supply chain.
Mm.
All your suppliers are part of your team. You can't necessarily tell them what to do. In some instances you can, but you could influence them to meet your standards. You can do that contractually. You can do that by speaking with them. You can do that by getting to know their operation. You can also do that by investing in them. And investing doesn't necessarily mean a dollar investment. It means investing to making sure that they're meeting your standards, and you're going to use your resources to help them so that you are both better off. Because if one of you loses, possibly you both lose. So it's very imperative that you look at your ecosystem and see where the weaknesses and where the threats are. And so the thing that the military bring to the board level is that strategic, larger view, that it is not just about the actions of the one, but it's the actions of the many that influence the outcomes.
And when you say threats, obviously we're talking about cyber threats, but we're actually talking about lots of different threats, right? You have competitive, you have threats from other products and services that might be better than yours or better marketing. So there's a lot of different threats that I think, again, you'll be thinking about, right?
No, absolutely. And the threat from within, and I don't mean the insider threat. I mean, if you look recently, we had some large outages of services in the cloud from different companies, not just one. Without knowing exactly the details that haven't been released yet, it is very likely that was a configuration error that caused a denial of service that is the same as if a threat did it. You lost your ability to operate. And so now you look at that as, what are the type of threats that influence your organization? Are you agile enough? Are you using the latest technology? Are you using it securely? And are you integrated? Again, I'll bring up supply chain. Are you integrated with your partners? Because you're only as strong as your weakest link. You heard that said. In this space here, through the technology and automation, it's amplified, has larger reach, and it moves at the speed of light.
Of that. Well, let's talk a little bit about upcoming threats and threats that you see in the future. So let's talk about cyber. So what are we seeing? Is there something happening right now that we should be aware of, that you're allowed to tell us, of course? And then are there any future threats that you see on the horizon that we can help kind of mitigate?
So again, another fascinating question. You've done your homework. I really appreciate that. We'll call it the systemic threat, the systemic risk. When the internet was built, it was not built on a foundation of security. It was built on a foundation of connectivity. That those connective tissue between organizations through automation exists throughout. It's ubiquitous. The challenge we have is understanding how that may impact our organization. And so you see a lot of governance that is occurring so that the supply chain is compliant with certain standards. And that is important because the supply system has to be resilient. In one of my previous jobs, I was a CTO for logistics automation for the South Korean peninsula for the US forces. And I realized at that time, as I was understanding the ecosystem, that my widget, I could trace it back to the factory through the automation. At any one point in that supply chain, that automation trail, if there was a break, it could impact my operation. That means I may not have the one piece of equipment that I may need to fight and win the war. That translates today, and it's not new. We're just really bringing it to light today. And because of AI now, a lot of people have this knowledge, skills, and ability at the edge of their fingertip at their keyboard that they normally don't have. And they can take advantage of that for good and for bad. And so understanding how to not just defend, but to be resilient. Expect the attack, expect the breakdown. How are you going to recover from that? What is your response going to be? Because once it happens, it doesn't necessarily matter why it happened, whether it was an internal failure, whether it was an external threat, or just something broke. The impact is real. You'll figure that out later. You have to keep operating. You have to keep going.
It's almost like you have to just assume these things are going to happen, right? They're like part of life now, almost, right? And
Right.
And I think it's the board's role also to be thinking foresight, right? Looking ahead and saying, as a board, as a leadership team, as a company, are we prepared to respond, right, to something like this? So how do we respond? What is the risk mitigation strategy here? How do we avoid this?
So first of all, at the board level, you're not necessarily telling your reports, your organization, the CEO and his staff, you're not telling them what to do. That's the CEO's role. But my role in that is to make sure they are thinking and have their priorities set on what's important. And a lot of that is asking the right questions. Asking the questions that is going to draw out the conversation, and this comes back from the military side, so they have the revelation, because I'm not going to fix it for them. They're going to fix it. But once a problem arises and they bring it to the board level, it's now our decision. Are we going to empower them to fix it? And that comes in many, many forms, and you're just one vote, but the idea is to get the coalition, everyone at the table there, to see what is the best way to address this challenge. But one thing you do want to be open to, you do want to be open to receiving that bad news of something is happening, because you don't want to be the last one to know, especially when you may have some solutions that are available. And that goes back to that network of trust. Trust that your people can talk to you and we can discuss this. But the idea of when you're thinking of the challenges that you may have, what they look like and how you deal with them, I can come up with a perfect plan, but if I don't have the people, the resources, and the environment set up to execute that, then it's just a piece of paper. And so the idea is, as you're coming up with this, you work with the team that you have, the resources that are available, on how you would respond to a given situation.
How important is the training of employees and the education around, because cybercrime can be quite extreme, and then it can be quite sort of informal, right? And some of it can cost you your whole company, and some of it can just be, well, the website went down or something happened for a split second, and we were able to recover quickly. But how are companies, do they need to educate their employees on some of this stuff? Is that an important piece here?
It is. So one thing that we used in the Army is you train like you fight and you fight like you train. If you prepare in a way that mimics what reality would look like in an actual negative situation, a combat situation, a downtime, anything like that, and you train as if that happened and you respond to that, when it actually happens, you have the mindset, you have the resources, and you are prepared to do this. And you can plan all you want. And you got to hear this all out here. The plan that you have is worthless, but the planning is priceless. And what does that mean? If anyone has ever written a crisis response plan, and you ask the group, the audience, who has read that plan? And you'll see a few hands go up, an entire crowd. I've done this in big audiences of hundreds and hundreds of people. And a few people raise their hand that they've read the plan. And then I ask them, did you write it? And the only people who read the plan are the ones who wrote it. So what you do is you bring training in to make that plan come to life so that you can rehearse, so you can bring the different aspects of whatever it is that you're trying to prepare for. And when it comes to cybersecurity, it is not the CISO's responsibility alone. It is not the IT individuals. It is a whole of organization. I had a conversation about what's the janitor's role in cybersecurity. And someone said, they have no role in cybersecurity. And I said, what does a janitor do? I said, do you remember when we were in high school, the janitor knew everything. He knew all the scuttlebutt. He knew everything that was going on in the school. Same thing in your organization. They have the keys to every single office. They know when something is out of place. They're your eyes and ears. But do they know they have a responsibility to report when something's out of place? That's the thing, is you have to empower your team members to do the right thing, and you have to teach them and demonstrate what the right thing is over and over and over, because the way you behave when it's not a crisis is the way you're going to behave when it's a crisis. If it's not important before, you're not going to be prepared to do it. So you train like you fight like you train, and you live by that security, like safety is everybody's responsibility. And so that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's training is critical to make a plan come to life.
I have a good story, actually, a janitor story, where a company, actually, they had a guy dressed up as a telecommunications guy and came in and said, oh, I've got to go and look at your, telecommunications box, or whatever
Right.
it was, give me the key to the cupboard, wherever it is. And he just went in and stole a bunch of data and walked out. So the janitor then would have been very helpful to say, I'm sorry, you haven't, we don't have you on the list of dedicated people today. So yeah, this is all fascinating. And I'm sure that the work that you're doing with companies is across all of these areas, and I think that it's so needed right now. Let's jump back into boards again. I want to talk to a little bit about, and there are military veterans who are listening to this, and I can see some of the names popping up. Hi, Andrew. I know we chatted beforehand, but if somebody is a retired military veteran and they are retired military, and they're thinking about serving on boards or sort of launching a board career, what would be your advice? What would you tell them?
It's something that, one, you're going to have to figure out what to do when you leave the military. This is one of those opportunities for you to explore. So first, understand what it means. What are the duties, responsibilities that a board member has? And then look at your own experience and where do you already fit or fill that criteria, and where do you have gaps? Just like any job. And then how do you fill that gap? But remember, we said earlier that it's trusted relationships. It's individuals who know you and know what you want to do. How do you get in that circle? If you want to be on a board, you have to go where other board members are. Where is their circle of friends? That's where you and I met. Mm-hmm. We met at an NACD event here in Naples, and met several people who have either aspirations or experience. And you start talking with them about what are their pain points, what is the day in the life of, and where does my resume, where does my experience lack that, and where do I actually have good depth in that? One thing in the military you will have is strategic decision making, leadership, influence, understanding collaboration, and accountability, your ethics. All of those are very important attributes of a board member.
I love it. Now, you've obviously served on a corporate board. You've been on nonprofits. We'll talk about nonprofits in a moment. But what surprised you about serving on a board? And I know that you had been in corporation, you'd been in an executive role, right, in C-suite roles before. But what surprised you specifically about serving on a board?
Well, I'll tell you, the big shift on that is your role. Who is your boss? Because the board is at the top of the chain, of the stack of the leadership, but it's really not. You serve the shareholders. You serve the investors. That's who you're accountable to because they picked you to serve their interest. And so it's understanding that. The other part is you're no longer operational. You now become very strategic. So it's looking at the problem differently than how do I fix this? And you want to put your hands on it and you want it, and you have to step back. That's not your role. Your role is to inform, inspire, and empower the people, the organization, the C-suite to get that done. And also to provide the resources for them to do it. And so the other part that was of great interest, not just who's your boss and what your role is, but you are one of many on the board. You are not alone. And so you have to have a collaborative effort because the majority of you have to agree that this is the right thing to do. Each members of the board have a different specialty, something that they offer that is unique, a different perspective, different experience, different skill set, different network. And you have to help them understand, and they have to help you understand why this decision is better than the other. It's especially challenging as a cybersecurity person because you're talking geek speak. That language does not resonate at the board. You have to talk business. You have to understand what influences the bottom line and translate all your geek speak, all your technology language that you have into language that a business person would understand and make it matter to them. And that's something that comes easy for some, very difficult for others. And so a lot of what I do is translate and coach.
And I know for a lot of people, starting out a nonprofit board is a great experience. You get governance experience, you get to network, and do some great work in the community. Tell us about the nonprofits that you serve on and why they're valuable to you both today and while you were getting started.
Sure, I serve with a lot of organizations that focus on cybersecurity and reaching out to expand the base of knowledge. And what that means, reaching out to different diverse communities, so that we can get more people into the field because there just isn't enough, there's not enough people with the right skill set in cybersecurity. And with AI, that is changing as we speak now. So there's a whole new look at that. But the idea of picking the right board for a nonprofit, number one, it's going to give you a lot. It's going to give you exposure to governance. It's going to expose you to how board structures work. It's going to expose you to the influence that you have, and you get to sharpen that skill. But that's what you get. You also want to make sure, what do you offer to the board? Why would they pick you to serve? And so it's a two-way street. You have to add value to them. But ultimately, one of the biggest factors for me is, how can I help them? And does it resonate with with my beliefs, my values, my ethics? And if those things line up, their mission, my ethos, my skill set, their need, and all of those line up, then it's a good fit. But if you're doing it just for what you get out of it, then I would not want you on my board.
Right. No, I like that. And finally, let's talk about what your plan is personally for the year ahead. Are you looking at more boards? I know you're running your own business now, and that's going very well. What is your plan for boards this year?
Sure. So what I'm looking for is a new position on a board that deals with cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, and also with national security. And it has to line up where accountability and ethics and giving back or serving the community and your constituency are very important. And so having those personal ethos that we talked about and the mission of the organization and where my skill set can offer something, if those line up, then that's what I'm looking for. And there's a lot of organizations, could be in medical, that's critical infrastructure. There's several. And so the idea that there's a lot of opportunities. And one thing I will say though, and we probably didn't cover it, I meant to cover and I failed to, is while we talk about cybersecurity, one thing the military people bring to the table is they're leaders, they're decision makers. They understand risk. They understand how to work in that environment and make decisions and how to lead effectively. That's part of your training, part of your upbringing. If you stay in more than one term, and that's what's important. Is a lot of times when I'm sitting in the board, my expertise that I'm giving is not cybersecurity; it's my organizational leadership, because that's what all of us in the military do. That in addition to our skill set.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's not, serving on a board isn't about just being in one lane, right? You have to be able to see the business from a wider perspective. And then the military training has obviously done that. So that's fantastic. Well, I would like to, I'll be wrapping up in just a second, but I want to just go over a few things. JC, you talked about how board members inform, inspire, and empower. And I feel like you've done that today with us. So thank you very much for sharing all of your advice. And I think actually for people who obviously are in the military, they're thinking about being on boards later on. This was a great conversation, but I feel like people who are even just trying to get onto boards, right, have learned a lot from this discussion. And I think we can learn a lot from some of the training that you've inspired us on, and then this lead through influence, right? I think this is a major talking point, and the collaborative side as well, which is absolutely essential. So, JC, any final words? Anything you'd like to say?
Well, one, to all the veterans out there on Veterans Day, thank you for your service, and not just you, your families and your loved ones that are all around you. And I see this as an extension of that, continuing to serve, and you serve in a different capacity as you move along in your career. So I want to thank you for the opportunity of sharing this message on this day. And I appreciate being here with all of you.
Well, thank you, JC. Thank you for your service. And thank you, everyone, for listening. And I'm sure we will be back soon. So thank you.